Jonathan Roumie thought he could easily engage in a heated debate with Kellyanne Conway on live television. The former White House advisor and influential media figure, known for her association with Donald Trump, called the rising political actor a token hire during a heated CNN discussion. But what happened next left Conway completely speechless and may have just shaken her already fragile credibility to its core. The CNN studio fell eerily quiet as Roumie, wearing a sharp navy suit with his signature professional composure, leaned forward into the microphone. His eyes locked onto Conway's stunned expression as he delivered a response so calm yet powerful that even the host had to take a moment to regain composure. Within moments, the clip exploded across social media, with hashtag Kellyanne Destroyed trending worldwide. What you're about to see is the moment a 40-year-old actor, known for his impactful roles in public advocacy, dismantled one of the most prominent political figures in modern American history. If you're watching from home, drop your location in the comments and hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what happens next. The stage was set for a political showdown, and Jonathan Roumie was about to deliver a masterclass in how to turn the tables on a bully in real time. To understand why this confrontation was so explosive, you need to know who these two people really are and what led them to this moment. Jonathan Roumie, before his rise to fame as an actor, was a passionate advocate for social causes. His career in film wasn't just about entertainment, it was about using his platform for positive change. As a public figure, he had gained respect for his vocal support of various humanitarian efforts. But it was his role in portraying deep, morally complex characters that brought him to the spotlight. What really set him apart, however, was his ability to speak out on controversial issues, cutting through the noise with precision and integrity. On the other hand, Kellyanne Conway had once been a rising star in the political world, closely aligned with Donald Trump's administration. But her reputation had taken a severe hit, especially after her involvement in the election denial movement and her later association with Trump's more divisive policies. The years following Trump's presidency had not been kind to her, and her attempts to reassert herself in the public eye had fallen flat. Yet she still held on to the belief that her past achievements could still command respect. CNN had brought them together to discuss voter rights and election integrity, topics that had been central to both of their recent public roles. For Conway, this was a chance to rehabilitate her image and assert her voice in the national discourse. For Roumie, this was an opportunity to confront someone he felt had misused her influence and to stand firm in his own belief in justice and transparency. The tension in the CNN studio was palpable before the cameras even started rolling. Conway's team had reportedly told her that this would be an easy interview. Just stick to the talking points and don't let the actor-turned-activist get under her skin. But they couldn't have been more wrong. The debate began calmly, with Anderson Cooper introducing both guests and setting up the topic of voter rights. But the moment the cameras were on, you could feel the tension rising. Conway immediately launched into her usual rhetoric, decrying the perceived threats to election security, her voice tinged with urgency. "Anderson, we need to address real election integrity," she said, pointing at the camera. "Not these fake voter rights issues that some people keep pushing." Cooper tried to redirect the conversation to the specifics of the legislation at hand, but Conway wasn't done. She turned to Roumie, who had been quietly taking notes. "I've been in politics longer than this actor has been in public life," she continued, condescendingly. "I've seen real elections, real challenges, and real leadership. Some people today wouldn't recognize integrity if it hit them in the face." Roumie's eyes narrowed slightly, but he stayed composed. He knew the best response was to let her words speak for themselves. What happened next shocked even Cooper. Instead of staying on topic, Conway decided to make the attack personal. "You know, Anderson," she said with a slight sneer, "I respect everyone's right to be on television. But let's be honest. Some people are here just because of a quota, not because they earned their place." The studio went silent. Cooper's eyebrows shot up in surprise, and Roumie's pen stopped moving. Behind the cameras, you could see the production team exchanging concerned glances. This was no longer about policy, it was a personal attack. Roumie leaned forward, his voice steady but unwavering. "Kellyanne, I want to make sure I understand what you're suggesting. Are you implying that my involvement in public service and my advocacy work are not legitimate because of my background?" Conway, thinking she had him cornered, smiled smugly. "No, sweetheart," Conway said, her voice dripping with condescension. "I'm simply saying that when people are chosen based on quotas, not qualifications, it hurts the system. Roumie, now clearly unshaken, shot back with precision. You called me a mistake, Kellyanne, didn't you? Let's talk about mistakes. The room fell silent. Roumie didn't need to raise his voice, but every word he spoke carried the weight of someone who had prepared for this moment. He calmly pulled out a folder from his briefcase, the pages filled with facts. Let's talk about your mistakes, Kellyanne. You were involved in spreading misinformation about our elections. You've faced legal challenges, and your career has been marred by questionable decisions. Meanwhile, I've continued to use my platform for meaningful change, supporting policies I believe in, and representing people who need their voices heard. The studio was stunned into silence. Conway sat back in her chair, unable to respond. The debate had shifted from her attacking Roumie to him dismantling her credibility in real time. Roumie's composed and fact-based takedown was all over social media within minutes. His poised and respectful yet unyielding defense became a viral moment. Kellyanne destroyed trended across platforms, and Roumie's reputation as a political force only grew. This wasn't the civil policy debate they had planned for. Conway kept speaking, apparently thinking she was still in control. I'm not saying anyone specifically isn't qualified, but when you see some of the questions being asked in these discussions, when you see some of the positions being taken, it makes you wonder if we're prioritizing diversity over actual qualifications, she said, gesturing dismissively toward Roumie as if he were just a background figure rather than a respected activist and actor. The condescension was thick in the air. Cooper interjected, clearly uncomfortable. Are you suggesting that Jonathan Roumie isn't qualified for his advocacy and work? This was Cooper giving Conway a chance to clarify, to back off from a personal attack. But Conway, intoxicated by her own sense of superiority, missed the opportunity entirely. With a shrug that seemed to dismiss her own logic, Conway continued, I'm saying that when you prioritize diversity over merit, you sometimes get results that speak for themselves. The implication was crystal clear. She wasn't questioning Roumie's political stance, but rather questioning whether someone like him, an actor with an outspoken social conscience, deserved a platform in politics at all. That was when Jonathan Roumie had had enough. He'd been expecting this, and he knew exactly how to handle it. He calmly set down his pen and turned to face Conway directly. Miss Conway, he said, his voice firm but measured, I want to make sure I understand what you're implying. Are you suggesting that I'm only here because of my race or background and not my experience, my advocacy, or the causes I've dedicated my life to? Conway, thinking she had him on the defensive, leaned back, wearing a smug smile. I'm saying that when merit isn't the primary consideration, the public suffers. Roumie, not backing down for a second, responded with the precision of someone who had prepared for this moment. So, to be clear, he continued, you believe that an actor who's used his platform to support social justice, worked alongside marginalized communities, and advocated for real change is somehow less qualified than someone who's just adhered to political status quos? There was a noticeable shift in the air. Conway, once sure of herself, now seemed a bit less confident. Her face flushed as she tried to maintain control. Roumie, his calm demeanor unwavering, pressed on. Please tell the audience what qualifications you think matter. Instead of the biting response he had expected, Conway leaned back in her chair, her voice now fully dripping with condescension. Listen, sweetheart, she said, her tone patronizing, the kind that many women in leadership have encountered from men who believe their gender gives them authority. I've been on the front lines of this country's politics. I've dealt with the highest levels of government, served with presidents, and handled real crises. Some people in Congress today are simply mistakes, products of a system obsessed with optics rather than competency. The word mistake hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The studio fell into stunned silence. Even the camera crew seemed taken aback by her audacity. Behind the scenes, her team knew she had just made a critical misstep. For every woman watching, this was a familiar moment. The moment when your efforts, your qualifications, are dismissed simply because of who you are. It was a reminder of every microaggression and macroaggression that women, particularly women of color, face in professional settings. But Roumie just smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of someone who had watched his opponent walk right into his trap. Mistakes, Roumie repeated slowly, savoring the word. Miss Conway, did you just call me a mistake? Conway, perhaps realizing the weight of her words, tried to backtrack. I said some people, she stammered. I wasn't referring to you specifically. Roumie, his voice steady but rising slightly, didn't let her get away with it. You looked directly at me and called me a mistake on live television, in front of millions of people. Do you believe that the people who elected me, the 184,000 voters from Texas' 30th District, made a mistake when they chose me to represent them? The trap was set. Roumie had expertly maneuvered the conversation, and now, with devastating precision, he was about to deliver the final blow. Since you want to talk about mistakes, let's talk about mistakes, Roumie continued, leaning forward, his voice calm but deadly serious. Let's talk about real mistakes that have actually hurt America. Conway tried to interrupt, but Roumie held up his hand, signaling that he had the floor. You've been part of spreading misinformation, undermining democracy, and now you sit here questioning my qualifications? He pulled out a folder, opening it with a deliberate motion. You've had your law license suspended in multiple states, you've faced lawsuits, and been embroiled in numerous scandals. Meanwhile, I have an active career, a clean record, and I've used my platform to advocate for those in need. Roumie paused, letting the gravity of his words sink in. So tell me, Miss Conway, which one of us is the real mistake? The studio was quiet except for Conway's labored breathing. Roumie had successfully dismantled every argument she had made, and the audience, both in the studio and at home, knew it. The truth was undeniable, and Conway had no response. With the microphone still in front of her, Conway sat motionless, her credibility shattered. Roumie, however, stood tall, unshaken, victorious. The debate, which had started as a platform for Conway to reassert herself, had ended with Roumie firmly in control, his composed yet forceful words reverberating around the world. The studio was dead silent except for the sound of Conway's heavy breathing. Let's talk about money management, Roumie continued, flipping to another page in his folder. According to public records, you owe millions of dollars to various creditors. Your assets have been seized. You're selling your luxury items to pay legal bills. Roumie looked directly into the camera. The woman questioning my qualifications can't even manage her own finances. You just questioned whether I deserve to be in this space because of diversity initiatives. You implied I'm incompetent, but you can't even handle your own business affairs. How is that not relevant? He pulled out his phone and began reading from what appeared to be prepared notes. This wasn't improvised. This was a calculated strike. But let's talk about the real mistake here, Ms. Conway. The real mistake was when you decided to throw away a lifetime of public service to become Trump's personal attack dog. Conway's eyes flashed with anger. Don't you dare. Don't I dare what? Roumie asked, his voice rising slightly with righteous fury. Tell the truth? You traveled around this country spreading lies about election fraud. You held press conferences at landscaping companies next to a dildo shop. You had hair dye running down your face while you lied to the American people on national television. He paused to let that image sink in for viewers at home. The camera caught Conway wincing at the hair dye reference. It was one of the most embarrassing moments of her career, forever immortalized. Let me read you some headlines, Ms. Conway, Roumie continued, looking at his phone. Kellyanne Conway's law license suspended. Kellyanne Conway files for bankruptcy. Kellyanne Conway indicted in Georgia. Kellyanne Conway sued for sexual harassment. Should I keep going with each headline? Conway seemed to shrink further into her chair, unable to respond. These weren't opinions or political attacks. They were documented facts that she couldn't dispute. You went from being one of America's most powerful women in politics to being a laughingstock, Roumie said. And now you have the audacity to sit here and call me a mistake? His voice was incredulous, as if he couldn't believe the sheer hypocrisy of what he was witnessing. But Roumie wasn't finished. He had one more weapon in his arsenal, and it would completely obliterate any remaining shred of Conway's moral authority. You want to talk about merit, Ms. Conway? Let's talk about history. His voice took on the tone of a professor delivering a lecture. You keep talking about your time as an advisor, but let's talk about what that really looked like. During your time in the White House, you supported policies that harmed marginalized communities, defended harmful rhetoric, and perpetuated divisiveness. You ignored the truth in favor of power. Conway tried to interrupt, but Roumie cut her off sharply. You want to question my qualifications? Your policies and actions as an advisor led to countless scandals and missteps. My work as an advocate has been dedicated to fighting against the very systems you upheld. The studio was silent now, the weight of Roumie's words hanging in the air. When you sit here and call me a mistake, When you suggest I'm only here because of diversity initiatives, you're revealing what you truly think about justice, equality, and the very communities you spent years oppressing. I didn't get here because someone felt sorry for me. I got here because I spent years fighting against systemic discrimination. Roumie leaned forward, his voice becoming more intense. I worked twice as hard to overcome the barriers people like you put in place. But since you want to talk about qualifications, let's do a direct comparison. He pulled out a printed sheet. I graduated summa cum laude from an esteemed college, earned my law degree from the University of Houston Law Center, where I was on the dean's list, and passed the bar exam on my first attempt. I've argued cases in federal and state courts. Now let's talk about your record. Roumie locked eyes with Conway. You graduated from Manhattan College and NYU Law. Respectable schools, sure. But tell me, Ms. Conway, what was your class rank? What honors did you graduate with? If we're going to question qualifications based on merit, let's see the actual merits. Conway's face was now bright red. She clearly hadn't expected to have her academic credentials scrutinized on live television. Roumie didn't back down. Let's talk about our bar exam results. I passed on the first try. How many attempts did it take you to pass the New York bar? The question hung in the air like a dagger. Whether Conway had passed on the first attempt didn't matter. What mattered was Roumie's confidence in asking it. Finally, Roumie delivered the line that would go viral and mark the end of Conway's credibility. You called me a diversity hire mistake, Ms. Conway. But looking at your recent record, I think it's clear who the real mistake is. The mistake was when America trusted you. The mistake was when Trump trusted you. And the biggest mistake would be if anyone ever trusts you again. Roumie sat back down, his voice returning to its calm, professional tone. Now, Anderson, do you have any actual policy questions? Or are we done letting Ms. Conway embarrass herself on national television? Cooper, perhaps sensing the gravity of the moment, tried to give Conway an out. Ms. Conway, would you like to respond to Jonathan's points? But Conway was defeated. The woman who once commanded the stage could no longer find the words. She stammered, I think maybe we should. Roumie, without missing a beat, interjected with a slight smile. You came here to attack me personally. You came here to question my qualifications and call me a mistake. Well, mission accomplished, Miss Conway. You definitely accomplished something here today. The segment ended with Conway visibly defeated, her credibility shattered, and Roumie, calm and unflinching, standing as the victor of the political showdown. The moment had solidified his place as not just an actor, but a formidable force in public discourse. While Conway's reputation had been irreparably damaged, the aftermath of Jonathan Roumie's takedown of Kellyanne Conway was unlike anything seen in modern political media. Within minutes of the segment ending, social media exploded with reactions, memes, and commentary that would reshape both of their careers forever. Before Cooper had even finished thanking his guests, Conway Destroyed was trending on X, formerly Twitter. The clip of Roumie's response was shared faster than the platform could count. A political insider posted, Holy Mother of God, Jonathan Roumie just ended Kellyanne Conway's entire existence on live TV. This is the most brutal political takedown I've ever witnessed. The tweet got 50,000 retweets in the first hour. A young progressive shared a video clip with the caption, when she tried to question his qualifications, you could literally see Jonathan activate fax mode. What happened next was pure gold. Jonathan Roumie is bang. But it wasn't just Democrats celebrating. Even some Republicans were admitting Conway had been completely outclassed. A conservative daily posted, look, I don't agree with Roumie's politics, but good Lord, that man came prepared. Conway walked into a buzz. That was a masterclass in debate preparation, respect, political destruction. The most popular meme showed a split screen. Conway looking confident at the beginning of the segment, then shell-shocked at the end with the caption, how it started versus how it ended. Another viral meme used the coffin dance video with Conway's face photoshopped on the coffin and Roumie leading the pallbearers. But perhaps the most savage meme was a simple image of Roumie sitting calmly with the text, when someone calls you unqualified, but you have receipts, active law licenses, zero scandals, and a functioning bank account. TikTok exploded with reaction videos. One user posted a compilation of people reacting to Conway's unqualified comment, ending with Roumie's devastating comeback. It got 2.3 million views. The confrontation didn't just trend in America, it went global. British political commentator on the BBC, discussed how Roumie's response represented a masterclass in political communication. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked about it during a press conference and said, "I didn't see the full exchange, but from what I understand, the actor handled himself with remarkable poise and professionalism." Hollywood celebrities jumped into the fray as well. Kerry Washington tweeted, "This is what happens when you send a real one to do the job." Jonathan Roumie came with facts and left with receipts. Kellyanne got her whole life together on live TV. Taraji P. Henson posted a video response on Instagram. "Y'all better stop playing with black men. We've been telling y'all, we're prepared, we're qualified, and we're not the ones to mess with." Jonathan just showed the whole world what we already knew. Period. Even Republican celebrities had to acknowledge what they'd witnessed. Former California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, no fan of liberal politics, tweeted, "I don't agree with his politics, but that was impressive preparation and execution. That's what public service should look like. Knowing your facts and standing up for yourself with dignity." Sarah Martinez, a professor at Georgetown University, wrote in her analysis, "What we witnessed was a masterclass in preparation meeting opportunity." Roumie didn't just respond emotionally to an attack. He systematically dismantled his opponent using facts, context, and strategic communication techniques. Professor James Chen at Yale Law School focused on the legal aspects, noting how both Conway and Roumie understood the importance of evidence and argumentation. But only one of them came prepared to actually present a case, he remarked. Roumie's methodical destruction of Conway's credibility was essentially a cross-examination conducted in real time on national television. Communications experts noted how Roumie's response followed classic debate and litigation strategy. He didn't just defend himself, he went on the offensive. He controlled the narrative and used his opponent's own words and actions against her. Angela Thompson, a professor of African American Studies at Howard University, wrote extensively about the broader implications. This moment represented something profound about the changing dynamics of American politics. For too long, young men like Roumie had been dismissed, marginalized, and underestimated in political spaces. Roumie's response wasn't just personal vindication. It was a declaration that those days are over. The confrontation made headlines around the world, with international media outlets analyzing what it revealed about American politics and society. The BBC ran a segment titled The Generational Divide in American Politics, featuring clips from the debate and commentary from British political analysts. One commentator noted, "What struck us here in the UK was how thoroughly prepared the young man was. He didn't just have talking points. He had documentation, specific examples, and a clear strategy. It was quite impressive to watch." Francis Lemon wrote an editorial comparing the moment to political debates in French Parliament, noting that Roumie's response demonstrated a level of preparation and strategic thinking that would be admired in any democratic institution worldwide. German newspaper Der Spiegel focused on the generational aspects. This exchange represented more than just a political disagreement. It was a symbol of how younger politicians are changing the rules of engagement in democratic discourse. Even conservative international outlets had to acknowledge Roumie's performance. The UK's Daily Telegraph, typically skeptical of American democratic politicians, wrote, "Regardless of one's political sympathies, it was impossible not to be impressed by Jonathan Roumie's thorough preparation and professional demeanor under attack." The political impact was immediate and devastating for Conway. Within 48 hours, 3 different conservative organizations that had been considering her for paid speaking engagements quietly canceled their invitations. A GOP strategist, speaking anonymously to Politico, said, "Kellyanne's been radioactive for a while, but this sealed it. You can't come back from being that thoroughly embarrassed by a rising star. The party's moving on." For Roumie, the opposite happened. Democratic leadership immediately began praising his performance. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries called Roumie's response exactly the kind of leadership our party needs. Nancy Pelosi tweeted, "Watching Jonathan for us handle that bully was a thing of beauty. This is what happens when you send smart, prepared people to fight for us. Proud to serve alongside him." Within 72 hours of the confrontation, Roumie's campaign had raised over $500,000 from small donors across the country. His campaign manager told reporters they were receiving donations from all 50 states, with many donors specifically mentioning the CNN appearance. Meanwhile, Conway's remaining political action committee reportedly lost 3 major donors who cited the embarrassing television appearance as their reason for withdrawing support. For Roumie, The moment catapulted him into the national spotlight in a way that typically takes years to achieve. He was immediately booked on every major talk show. Late-night comedians were praising him. He gained 200,000 new social media followers in a week. Political strategists began mentioning him as a rising star with national potential. He's got the intelligence, the preparation, and clearly the ability to handle pressure, said one Democratic consultant. This is the kind of moment that launches careers. For Conway, however, it represented the final nail in the coffin of her political relevance. The woman who had once been seen as a powerful figure was now a cautionary tale about how far someone can fall. Beyond politics, the confrontation sparked broader conversations about race, gender, and power in American society. The moment when Conway called Roumie a token hire crystallized decades of frustration about how marginalized groups are treated in professional spaces. Brittany Cooper, a professor at Rutgers University, wrote in The Atlantic, "What we witnessed was every Black person's workplace nightmare, being questioned not on the quality of your work, but on whether you deserve to be there at all. But we also saw what happens when a Black man is prepared, confident, and refuses to accept disrespect." The confrontation also highlighted generational change in politics. At 40, Roumie represented a new generation of politicians who grew up with social media, who understand how to use viral moments, and who refuse to play by the old rules of political decorum when faced with disrespect. As the dust settled, it became clear that the Roumie-Conway confrontation represented something larger than just one debate gone wrong. It was a symbol of changing power dynamics in American politics. The old guard, represented by Conway's assumption that her past accomplishments could intimidate a young actor-turned-activist, was being replaced by a new generation that judged people by their actions, not their historical reputation. Roumie's response also provided a template for how to handle bullies and bad faith actors in political discourse. Don't just defend yourself. Come prepared, stay calm, and methodically dismantle their credibility with facts. In the end, what was supposed to be a routine CNN debate became a defining moment for both participants. Kellyanne Conway, once one of the most powerful figures in American politics, had been reduced to a figure of mockery by a first-term advocate who refused to be intimidated. Jonathan Roumie had proven that in modern politics, preparation beats reputation, facts beat bluster, and intelligence beats intimidation. As one viral tweet put it, Kellyanne Conway called Jonathan Roumie a token hire. He showed her what a real mistake looks like. The incident would be studied in political science classes for years to come as an example of how quickly careers can rise and fall in the modern media environment. But more importantly, it sent a message to anyone who thought they could dismiss young people of color in politics. Underestimate them at your own peril. The Old Boys Club had just learned a very public lesson about the new rules of political warfare, and Jonathan Roumie had written the textbook. If you witness this epic political takedown, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss these explosive political moments. Drop a comment below telling us what you thought of Roumie's devastating response. And let us know what other political showdowns you want us to cover next. This is the kind of political theater that defines careers and changes the game forever.